it should not be one of the last things that's considered, because that's how you get new patients in. Rarely anymore do you just put a sign up that says dentist and people start showing up. You don't exist online, you don't exist.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients podcast, sponsored by the Doc Sites and Cloud Dentistry. Today, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. Actually, I'm always your host, Dr. Len Tao. And I'm excited today to be discussing marketing with someone I had just recently met. I've seen him online, especially in the Dental Nachos group. But I met him at the Maverick Summit earlier this year, and I offered him an opportunity to come on the podcast and tell you about what he can do, how he can help you, and things that he does with marketing. So today's episode is titled, How You Can Trust Your Marketing, 5 Essential Keys You May Be Missing. And we're going to be talking about those 5 essential keys, as well as some common marketing mistakes that dentists can avoid, how to build a sure marketing foundation. So welcome to the Raving Patients podcast, Jamie DiBease. Jamie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Len. I appreciate it. I was so glad that you came up and introduced yourself to me, and we got a chance to talk. I have listened to quite a few of your episodes, and just appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this and to be able to share some information that's going to help dentists.
Well, I'm excited to speak with you. I love talking to marketing people. I'm a marketer by heart. I teach marketing to dentists. I always like learning things that I may not have learned before. So this is educational for me in some ways as well. So to begin with, as I mentioned, you're more well known in Dental Nachos universe. I don't know how much you have a brand name throughout the dental industry per se. So for those that may not know who you are or who may not know anything about Day One, can you give your background, how you decided to get involved with dentists and how you help dentists?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I have an engineering degree, and when I graduated, I couldn't get a job. So I started working in my parents' advertising agency and continued with that because I really enjoyed it and just stuck with it. Well, fast forward about 20 years, I started my own agency. We've been around for over 12 years now. And most of that time, though, I was not working with dentists. I was working with large franchise organizations, large corporate entities, and that's really the background that I bring in. But I really didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy the entire numbers game. Everything was, you were hired or fired at the whim of the next CMO. And I just didn't like the instability of always wondering what was going to happen and personality conflicts, etc. So I was looking for a new place to begin. And a good friend of mine, Dr. Matt Bickle, unfortunately for him, but fortunately for me, he was having some significant issues with his marketing. And as a good friend, you want to help out. So I began to help him out. We were able to solve some of the issues that he had, be able to get him on the right track. And he let me know that the problems he was having with his marketing were very common for dentists. And as a result, he then put me in touch with Dr. Paul Goodman. And the rest is kind of history at that point. So that was a little over 4 years ago. We exclusively are working with dentists now. And what we have learned is that a lot of dentists could really benefit from building a marketing system, not just having a bunch of marketing pieces in place, but building a system. And that's really what we do to help dentists, is help to create a marketing system that's unique for their practice, that is going to bring in the types of patients that they want.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And you're based in New Jersey?
I am based in New Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia.
And it's interesting because I have people who I speak with, and they say, I want a marketing agency, and I live in California, so I want one in California. I'm like, why? You know, you're a national company. You can work with anybody around the country. So I always question that type of question from a dentist. But for those that do care, he's located near Philadelphia. There you go. So let's get right into what we wanted to talk about. And I want to start with what we have on the title here, and then we can get into some of the other things. We talked about the 5 essential keys you may be missing. Can you walk us through a little bit step by step about what those keys you may be missing? I give a seminar called Dominate Your Marketing Online. It's 2.5 to 4 hours. And one of the things I talk about is when it comes to website design, things that your web designer may be doing incorrectly, because there's a lot of things that they don't put on the websites that they should. So when someone's putting a marketing plan together, there's things that obviously may be missing. And as you mentioned pre-recording, dentists just hire someone in and they never look at the results. They never analyze anything. They never look at reporting. They have no idea what return on investment's about. So can you go through these 5 essential keys that someone may be missing when it comes to marketing?
Yeah, sure. The first one is sort of your foundational piece, and that's really understanding your why. Why are you doing marketing? And with that, who are you trying to reach? Many people will just assume that they will put a website up and that's all that happens. Or they're very aggressive on social media with ads and that's all that happens. But the issue that concerns me is a lot of times what we're seeing is that there isn't a plan. There's no understanding of the types of patients you want to reach. And sometimes it's just a shotgun approach. Other times it's so laser specific that there might be 5 people in your audience that could possibly be a potential patient. And so understanding your audience, but along with that, it's also understanding what is going to work for those people. What is their journey from I need a dentist to then actually becoming one of your patients? And so that isn't really often considered. So that's the first mistake, is not understanding the audience, the potential or future patient, and understanding how marketing is going to reach them. The second one is then not really putting in place a system or a plan. This is perhaps one of the biggest areas we're working with dentists in. Is what we're finding is many of them will have a bunch of things that we call checkboxed. So checkbox, I got a website. Checkbox, I have somebody posting on social media. Checkbox, I have some sort of review generation going on. Checkbox this, checkbox that. But there isn't a plan. There isn't a reason for how everything works together. There really isn't a system in place. And so we refer to this as, systematizing your marketing. Everything is going to work together, and everything has a purpose in that plan. Otherwise, you probably shouldn't be doing it if it doesn't fit into that plan. As a side note with this, one of the things we often find is that there's this shiny red object syndrome. And a dentist is going to hear from another dentist or from a podcast or from a Facebook group, something along those lines, where this worked for me and this is the latest and greatest. And immediately there's this, let me jump onto that without seriously evaluating how it fits into the marketing plan. And so we make sure that every dentist we're working with is not just jumping on the next bandwagon, but we'll evaluate and work with them. So really, it's the second mistake is not having a system. The third mistake that we often see is that there really isn't any measurements being taken to see if the marketing works. It's sort of I'll just go look at my new patient report. How many new patients did I get last month? How many new patients did I get this week? And, maybe for somebody that's all that's needed. But if you have a comprehensive marketing plan in place where you know what you're doing, where you know where everything is coming from, where all your patient leads are coming in, where you're recording, where your team is really interested in learning where they're coming from, because it is a team effort. It's not just the marketing team doing this passive work for you. It is a team effort. So with what we like to make sure is that you're seeing numbers, and a lot of dentists aren't looking at the numbers. They're not looking at, honestly, they don't have the time for it. But as far as a practice goes, if you're not looking at what's working and the KPIs of what is important for your practice, you're not really getting the information that you need, and you just allow something to keep on running, really out of ignorance, out of just not having the time to check on it. So the third mistake is not looking at the numbers. The fourth mistake is not putting into place some sort of oversight. We call this, sort of like a reporting. Like, okay, so we've looked at the numbers. What are we getting? What kind of dollars are behind this? What kind of productivity are we getting from this? Are we getting the right patients that we want to get from this? This is an area of transparency. You have to know, is the return there? Is this something that makes sense for you? Is this something that needs to be addressed? And then the last piece on this is optimize. There's no such thing, Len, as set it and forget it marketing. And this is perhaps an area that if I could drive something home, it's that there's no such thing as you're done. Like we've had a lot of people ask us, okay, so I have a website. do I need to change it? Yes, you do. I have ads running. Do I ever need to change them? Yes, you do. And so it's a continual process. That's the idea of a system, is to make sure that everything that you're doing has a plan, has a purpose. You're looking at it. It fits into the financial piece. You're getting the return on it. And then you're always coming back to, is this really working optimally? And so those are the 5 mistakes that we often address when we're working with dentists.
I heard everything you said. I agree with everything you said, because that's what I kind of mentioned to docs when I speak with them. But I think the one thing I want to touch on first is, the fact that when I talk to doctors and I tell them that they need to market their practice, one of the most common things I hear is, well, I can't afford to market my practice. And I don't know how you cannot not afford it to market your practice. But there's an expected return on investment that if you do things properly, that you should be getting from an investment that you're making in marketing. And marketing is an investment, not an expense. It's something you have to do to grow your business. You have to do it to attract more new patients. And if you aren't marketing your practice, I really think that it's a black eye, or you have a mark against you, because you're not looking at the big picture here. You're looking at, hey, I'm spending a couple $1,000, but if that couple $1,000 or $3,000 or whatever it is turns into 5, 6, 7 times the number, you should be marketing more and spending more money. And I think you'd agree with that.
What you've just pointed out is a conversation we will often have with a dentist that doesn't understand the value of marketing. And so there's certainly the financial piece. That's a given. If you only view marketing as a necessary evil, as an expense on your bottom line, then you're really going to struggle to understand how it fits into the bigger picture of the evolution of the practice. But marketing is an investment, and there's a certain amount of intangibles that come along with just having additional patients come in. One is, when you have any sort of system that a dentist puts in place, is to maximize efficiency, reduce team stress, reduce friction, to try and get a patient in the office as quickly as possible, treat them as appropriately as necessary, do the aftercare that's necessary. There's a system for all of that. And the reason that is done is you want to maximize your investment in time, materials, your education, your skill, your team's time. You also want to make sure that the patient has a great experience. There's a lot of intangibles that are going to go into that, aside from just the financial piece. So similarly with marketing, there's some intangibles. We have worked with so many dentists that have just hated marketing. They've hated it because they haven't done it right. They've either done it themselves. They've hired companies that didn't fulfill on the promise that they said that they would, and so it really just kind of burns them out. And
or it burns them.
We want to make sure. It burns them. It burns them, and it burns them out. It's such a stressful thing. And honestly, dentists are very smart people. You didn't get that degree because you weren't a smart person. But it has nothing to do with intellect when it comes to marketing. It has to do with time and the tools and the expertise. And you always have to stay on top of that. It's not like, I'm constantly going, I don't take CEs in the way that dentists would take CEs, but I'm constantly going to events, webinars, meeting people, reading, blog. There's a constant change with marketing and opportunities that are there. So to the dentist that doesn't see marketing as a valuable investment, we want to work with them and help them to understand it's not just a return, although that's very important. But just think about the less stress you'd have in place, the less burden you have of trying to figure out how your patients are going to come in. And here's a great example. One of our dentists was having one of his front desk team members ask every patient that came in to please leave a review. That was awkward for that person at the front desk because that wasn't really what she was comfortable doing. So they weren't getting reviews. It's just a simple thing like that. So there was a system that was put in place so that did not have to happen. And so now they're getting reviews all the time. So when you take some of the burden off of team members in a marketing realm, it frees them up to do so much more than just try and get something done that they're not able to do.
No, and I agree that I do. I think that dentists are as a whole here, and I can talk about dentists because I am one. A lot of them are concerned that they're not going to have return on investment. Okay. And, or how is it being reported to them? And I'll give you an example that I see a lot of, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. So and I'm not going to call out anybody's name here, but there's a well-known marketing agency that has a lot of California doctors specifically, but they're a national company. They have a templated website as well. And one of the things they do is they fix the listings, or they make the listings consistent using a tracking number. So that tracking number is on their website. The tracking number is on their Google My Business page, Google Business Profile. Their tracking number is on Facebook and Yelp and everywhere. It's covering the internet. And that's a tracking number. So that number appears on their Google My Business profile. And what happens is, if John Smith, who's a patient, refers Susie Jones to you, Susie Jones goes on Google to search for your number. They get to your Google My Business page and they call that number, which is a tracking number. Okay. The website company claims that it's a lead they generated when they had nothing to do with that lead. And it really elevates or causes the information that they're providing from an analytics perspective to be very, very wrong, because they're overinflating the numbers that they're actually getting for the office. And I think that really frustrates practices. And then worst case scenario, if they ever leave that marketing company, that tracking number goes away, and it actually shows it as a disconnect number on their Google My Business page, or it actually, when they call the office using that number, they think the office number has a problem, and it really doesn't. It's just a tracking number. So I hear that a lot. I see it a ton now with some companies. What is your suggestion to get over that, or what is your suggestion when it comes to that?
I have also heard that happens, and so I guess what I would look at is, let me point to how we would answer that question. So the way that we set information up, it's very important that you have consistent canonical information: name, business name, address, telephone number, web address, and to have that as many places that are possible that relate to the business. That's kind of like a foundational piece of marketing, search engine optimization as well. So we only use tracking numbers when we're doing paid ad campaigns, or in a very limited season of time if we're demonstrating that our SEO services have resulted not only in an improvement on in positioning, but an increase in the number of phone calls. So we try not to ever put a practice in a place where it's one tracking phone number that exists across the internet, hold them captive to that tracking phone number. That's not how we use them. In fact, we prefer that the practice have some sort of metrics in-house that allow them to record calls, whether it's their practice management system or something else they've added on to that, and allow us access, and we'll score the calls. We'll see where patients are coming from. We can help them figure it out, because we can see when we have a campaign, a correspondence between increased visits to the ads, increased visit to the website. So we will work with the office at whatever level they will allow us to do that. They won't be held hostage in the way that you've described it. And it really is unfortunate, because if there is ever a separation between that practice and that agency, unless that agency or an agency undoes what they have done, all of this information across the internet now is incorrect. And so we never put anyone in that position. So to the practice that's thinking along those lines, you want to understand what the consequences. So yes, you can track everything, and that's great, but there's consequences that have to be weighed against that. And what happens if you have to have separation?
Gotcha. So let's talk about some of the common mistakes that dentists can avoid. Now, I know we talked about the 5 things that you may be missing, but let's talk specifically about some mistakes that dentists can avoid, or things that you see dentists do that they should not be doing.
Sure. Oh boy. The first one that's coming to my mind is when a practice is in transition from being a new dentist is purchasing the practice, and during that time, they are thinking about all of the things that they want to get done. Now it's their practice. They're thinking, okay, I got to upgrade equipment. I want to do some renovations inside. I've got to figure out team members. I've got to figure out all the things that are necessary to make this my practice now. But one of the key things that is often overlooked is if you're also in the process of changing the practice's name. And many dentists are doing that when they're buying practices that have been around for a longer period of time. The dentist has been there 25, 30 years. It's under the dentist's name, or maybe it's under dentists' names that haven't been at the practice for a long time, and you want it to become your own. There is a wrong way to change your name online. And what we have seen a lot of is a lot of practices, when they're changing names, they will just indicate that the old practice, like their Google listing or their Yelp listing or any of those listings, they'll just mark them as closed, and then they'll open up a new listing. They'll start a brand new listing. And what that does is it really kills your online presence, because now Google's looking at you as a brand new entity. And so this is sort of a technical mistake that is often made. There is a transition period. There's a way that you can change the name. There's a way that you help Google understand that it's just the name that's changed. It's not that one business is closed and another one has opened. So that's one mistake. Another mistake that we see is, especially with some of the newer dentists who are exceptionally skilled at social media and come into practice ownership with thousands of followers, thousands of people that are listening to their content, but they're doing that on a personal level. And so when they come in to work on that doesn't translate very well into practice social media. I'll give you an example. One of our dentists is very well known, and their Facebook page has over 1,000 followers, which is great, which is fantastic. So we did a deep dive in that. And I don't remember the specific number, so I'm not going to tell you, but I know that it was well over half of the people that were on that Facebook page that they were outside of a 10-mile radius of the practice. And almost 20%, that number I remember was almost 20%, were on the opposite coast from where this dentist is located. Apparently they had a lot of their friends from dental school like their page. Similarly, on their Instagram, they had their practice's Instagram had 750 some followers, and 60 some percent of those people were dentists that were following their page. It doesn't really help them if you're going to use social media for marketing purposes. And it's hard to avoid that from happening, because it's not like you're going to block them from doing that, but you have to understand that when you open up a new practice, everybody you've ever known from elementary school, high school, college, medical school, friends, family, they're all going to just, maybe out of courtesy, or maybe they're interested, they're going to like your page. But from a marketing perspective, that doesn't help you build the right audience. And so we let people know this is a common mistake, is to think that you've got 750 people that you can follow, or even if you're trying to, on a more technical level, build a lookalike audience to try and use who's liked your page to try and market to more people like that. So there's systems we'll put in place when we work with people to help build local audience so that can kind of dominate who those socials think you should send content to.
And I agree with that. So what do you think is the best way to build a marketing foundation? I mean, I'm a firm believer in online reviews is the most important foundation for any practice, and to have a really, really good website, not just a brochure like website. Those to me are the really beginnings of the foundation that you need. But I was curious what your thoughts were on that.
So because I have an engineering background and an engineering mindset, I always like to make sure that every piece that's going to fit together has a purpose, has a plan, and is doing its job. So when I look at building a sure marketing foundation, for me, it starts earlier than where you mentioned it. It starts with making sure that your information is consistent. We see a lot of practices that, their content is just all over the place. And not all over the place in a sense of like where it should be, but all over the place. Like it varies. The practice name is different in places. The address is different. Maybe they've got different phone numbers. We were just working with a dentist who didn't even realize that the fax number that they have was their primary phone number on several sites. So starting with consistency with their content is kind of where even we enter into the conversation. Then we get into Okay, that's part of our messaging. Now, what is the purpose of your website? And you're right. It shouldn't be a brochure. It should be intended to be transactional. New patients are going to come to your website and they're looking for a solution. Yes, they want to know that you are an amazing dentist. They want to know that where you're located and your phone number, but really what they're coming there for is they want to know that you can take care of whatever their concern is, that they're going to come away having gone to your office no longer in pain. They're going to have the look that they want to desire, whatever their concern is, whatever's going to make them happier. They want to know that you're going to address that. So that goes back to what we talked about before is your message reaching those people? Because a lot of dentist websites look like a CV. Here's how great I am. Here's everything that I've ever done in my life. Here's all the associations I'm a part of. And that is important, but that's not what you lead with. It's relational. You want people coming in. So whether it's the use of video or photographs or a tour of your practice, you want people to be able to, within the first few seconds of coming to your website, to be able to know, I could be a patient here. That's a foundational piece. Reviews, absolutely. A system for getting reviews coming in. The content of reviews, many dentists don't realize that the content of reviews, as well as the responses to reviews, are something that Google is going to look at and they're going to evaluate. You get a certain number of them, they're going to begin to allow you to filter by that. There becomes a threshold, and some of the latest information I've seen is when you get to about 150 to 160 reviews, you're considered authoritative as long as your star value is 4.6, 4.7 and above. At that point in time, most people aren't really going to look at individual reviews, but a lot of practices, Len, we're working with a practice that just hired us, has been around for 20 years. They have 23 reviews.
Yeah.
23.
Yeah.
Now, to a person that is unfamiliar with that practice, it looks like it's a brand new practice.
100% so.
And so those foundational issues are all part of a system. Some people, their Facebook page has the first post from 2017, which is them updating their cover photo. So those are foundational. You need to have content. If you're not going to have a lot of localized content, you need to have some sort of content to show that you're alive, because socials are where people are helping to engage with you. What are other people saying? And so those, for me, those are building a sure foundation. Start with a system, consistency, make sure that you have content that relates to the types of patients that you want to have. And then from there, you want to make sure you're engaging with people. Again, there is no set it and forget it. So whether the practice hires us to engage as a ghostwriter or on their behalf, or they actually have someone dedicated to doing that, patients want to engage with you, and they want to hear that their dentist is going on vacation. They want to hear that their dentist, became a parent or became a grandparent. They want to hear that team members are celebrating milestones. They want to see that this is real. Otherwise, you're just noise in the background and your socials won't work.
Couldn't agree with you more what you said there, especially with the reviews and the fact that if you've been around for 20 years and you have 23 reviews, you literally have, it looks like you're brand new, and that's not good. Because we're limited on time, I have one more question for you, and then we'll get into the other parts of the podcast. But, differences between marketing for a startup versus a well-established practice. There's a big difference there. I think a lot of people are confused with what they need to be doing. Obviously, as a startup practice, you need to spend a little bit more money, in my opinion, to get everything ramped up. A higher percentage of your collections, obviously. As you have a well-established practice and you have everything in place, you can obviously lower that threshold from a collections or an overhead perspective. But what are some of the differences between marketing for a startup and marketing for a well-established practice?
With a well-established practice, as you just mentioned, they have a lot of systems in place. They have a lot, clinical systems in place. There's a lot of things that are going, and usually those well-established practices, from a marketing perspective, it's more of they are looking to how am I going to stay in business for the next 10, 12 years? Or perhaps that they are looking to add a new skill set. Maybe they're looking to add an associate. So in most cases, they're not looking for more patients because the current team member, the current doctor that's there is somehow not financially where he or she needs to be. It's more of an expansion because they've gotten past that stage of paying down their college debt, paying down their practice debt, and they're now in this growth phase of more money that's coming into the practice. is available to pay salaries, but also, okay, how do I invest this for future growth? And so a marketing system along those lines is really designed to fit the needs of the practice, whether it's they want to bring on an associate so they need more hygiene patients, or perhaps they're adding additional services. They're going to do Invisalign or some sort of clear aligners. Maybe the dentist has added implants or some sort of cosmetic procedures. And so now they want to market towards those. So those, building a system on that. But at that point in time, the practice likely has a well-established reputation in their area. And so there's not a lot of necessary from a Google perspective to try and persuade Google, this is a dental office, this is who's here, this is what they need, this is what's going on at this location. Whereas a startup practice, you have to put a lot of effort and energy and finances into telling the search engines, because that's the predominant way, aside from referrals, that's the dominant way that new patients are going to locate you. And we just started working with a dentist where their current location, before they bought it, before they opened up, was a gym, was a small custom gym. So right now that address is associated with a physical fitness center. They fortunately didn't buy, we've had some people take over phone numbers for practices in the past, but they didn't do that. They got a brand new phone number. But here's another thing. They didn't take into consideration that the phone number that they got had a history. So now their main phone number has a history of being a different type of business. And so they will occasionally get calls from a different type of business. So a startup has a lot more effort and energy going in to convince the location, Google, that this is a facility that didn't exist, now exists. And you mentioned there has to be a budget, a larger budget that's associated with that. It should not be one of the last things that's considered, because that's how you get new patients in. Rarely anymore do you just put a sign up that says dentist and people start showing up. You don't exist online, you don't exist.
That was really good, and I agree with that as well. I thought you gave us some really great information, and I'm going to ask you to give your contact information and for how do people to reach out to you in a couple of minutes here. But I want to spend the last couple of minutes that we have doing a fun section for me. For those that listen to the episodes, it's a Q&A section, lightning round, really, really fast answers. You don't have to go into too many details of things. But I'm going to ask you these questions, just give a quick answer here, okay? So what is the number one thing people are always asking you for help with?
They're asking me help with how to fix stuff that they've broken unintentionally, self-inflicted marketing wounds. That's the number one thing I get asked. How do I fix this?
All right. Who has been your greatest inspiration?
My greatest inspiration is going to have to go with my mentor. She is the first person that I've ever worked with. Her name is Jen. She is the first person I've ever worked with that has been able to help me get to the place in the business world that I am now. If it wasn't for her and just her constant, basically her friendship, but her oversight and her kicking me when necessary, she inspires me to be so much more in the business world.
Great. How do you capture and keep track of ideas? Do you have a notebook? Do you have voice memos?
Oh, whenever I have an idea, I will type it into my phone or talk into my phone, whichever one is appropriate at the time. I have ideas all the time. In fact, I hate it when I get ready to go to bed at night and I'm laying down and all of a sudden floods of ideas come to mind. And so my phone's right next to me, like most people's phones are, and I'll just start typing these things in. And it's not always a to-do list. It's, oh, this would be a great idea. This would be a great idea. And then what I will do is I will go through those ideas and begin to categorize them.
Great. What do you think your unique skill is that has helped you become successful?
I think that the area that I do best in is analytics. I've always had a very good grasp of numbers, visualizing them, but not just from a mathematical perspective, but understanding what they mean and being able to communicate that with people that don't necessarily have that same skill set that I have.
All right. What deserves all your attention but seldom gets it?
My yard.
All right. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
I live in a forest, and we're constantly between taking trees, branches, leaves, flowers. My poor wife is the consummate gardener. around here, but it's a constant battle to stay on top of.
Okay. If you had one piece of advice to someone just starting out, what would it be?
Ooh. I would suggest that you learn from other people, have a mentor. Whatever you're starting out in, whether it's a direct mentorship or learn as much as you can, because there's a lot of people out there that want to share their successes as well as the mistakes that they have made to help you avoid doing them. We often hear, and we talked about it earlier, the mistakes that dentists make. But you know what? There's a lot of successful things that people do as well. And learn what those successful things are. Try not to guess as much as possible. There's some people that are great initiators when it comes to information, but try to have as much information to start with.
And last question, how do you define success?
I define success when I get up and I feel like I can do the day. For me, success is not always a financial thing. It's more of a state of mind. When I get up in the morning and I feel like, okay, I've got a great day in front of me, to me, that's a successful day.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for giving us insights in those little questions there. So Jamie, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you, find out more information about how you can help them?
The best way to reach out to me is to schedule a time, and you can do that by going to my website. It's dentalmarketingfromday1.com, and there's a consultation that you can set up with me. You can set up a Zoom. You can set up a time to call me. Or if you wanted to email me, you can email me directly. It's Jamie, Jamie, at day1advertising.com.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight. I thought you did a great job going through the various things we wanted to touch base on. So thank you so much for joining me today. For those that are listening and are viewing, if you like what Jamie said, please reach out to him. He gave you his email. He gave you his website. You can schedule a consultation with him to find out more how he can help you and your dental practice. If you like the episode, please share it. We come out Fridays at 5 a.m. Check out our sponsors, both the Doc Sites and Cloud Dentistry. Check out my website, Dr. Len Tao, my new book, 100 plus tips for generating 100 reviews in 100 days. So there's a lot of ways to keep in touch with me. Thank you so much for joining me again, Jamie. And as I always end these episodes, remember, your reputation matters. Until we speak again, thank you and have a great day.